ChatGPT revolution has been quite exciting for anybody, in the artificial intelligence space, or rather AI space. Because I think for the first time in a very long time, organizations and people are starting to see the true value of what AI can bring, for an organization. And, for the first time, a lot of organizations are able to also really do all these really cool, great projects, taking all these different models that have already been pre-done, for them through large language models and just adapting them to their business and watching all the magic happen. But one key limitation that this has brought about is that for a lot of organizations, a lot of people, they haven't been able to really map out the distinct gap, or rather to close the gap between the technology and the business case, or rather, what it can do for the organization. And what this has done is, we've watched this happen over and over again, because when you're working in AI, even before this whole ChatGPT revolution, you would see that a lot of organizations would waste so much money trying to go after the new cool technology instead of actually figuring out how to map it, to a business objective. I think we saw this happen a lot, with organizations, especially, in industrial manufacturing, where, there was this big fuzz around robotic process automation, where, they're looking at all these really cool things that, they could do to use RPA to automate all these key things, and it was sexy technology, at its time. But the problem was that RPA as a technology is very expensive to implement. And the ongoing costs are also very expensive. And what we found was that a lot of organizations, whilst it would automate that particular task, it never really spoke to either increasing or improving customer experience. It never really spoke to improving efficiency of the organization. It never really spoke to helping them to find new growth opportunities. So what you'd find is that an organization would say, oh, RPA automates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tasks. So for example, I think one that we saw happening a lot in the last couple of years with RPA specifically was around, automating the invoicing process, right? So for example, it would get information from emails about work done, from the information from the emails for the work done, and then go on to multiply with the hourly rate of the organization, go and log into the accounting system, create this, do that. And, for organizations with large volumes of data and large volumes of transactions, this was working a lot for them and working very well because they wouldn't really need to get more and more people as they scaled. But organizations with not so many invoices to send or not so many transactions to be processing and working with, this was a very expensive endeavor. And a lot of organizations fell into the trap where they would spend millions implementing this RPA regime. After they've spent those millions, have to incur all these, almost 50, 60,000 monthly fees, they're paying to these RPA providers. And then from there now, they'd have a problem where they'd have to cut these programs short in between, where it actually was, much cheaper for them to just retain the employees they had in the first place and have them do it, because the speed that the RPA brought was not really worth the additional amount of money they had to pay for it. And understanding this trap that organizations go into, it's very critical that organizations also do not fall into the exact same trap, when implementing these AI solutions. Obviously, now that it's cheaper to do than, it was 2, 3, even 5 years ago, it's very critical that an organization first starts off by working with a small set, of data within the organization, or a small, sector within the organization where there's a significant pain, and where there's a very clear case where customer experience will improve, where efficiency will improve, and where new growth opportunities will be found. And then really, scale slowly with that technology until, it makes sense that, the additional cost of that will make sense. Because, for example, if you're using OpenAI, the API, it might seem very cheap, when you're playing around and you're doing a few hundred or a few thousand tokens at any given point in time, but you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of tokens, that really adds up. So it's very critical that, before, you even implement all this, yes, you've got to experiment with the technology, you've got to test, you've got to try out many different things. At the same time, you've got to avoid, the fallacy of falling for the new cool technology and actually really looking at what value does this solution bring for me? And then going on to make sure that, it's a very clear case in terms of customer experience, how that improve and how that improve top line. Going to look at operational efficiency. if, the operational efficiency is at this stable, at this level, how much more efficient are we going to get? And if we become that much more efficient, what in terms of dollar signs does this mean for the organization? And what is the bottom line going to look like? And then lastly, is this going to bring us new growth opportunities? I mean, we've watched organizations who were in one industry at one given point in time, and then they used AI to actually now pivot into new industries that they never traditionally were able to be capable of going into, but were able to, utilize the technology to get there. And I think in hindsight and in conclusion, as we, conclude this episode, it's very important to always make sure that, the homework is done and all the key parts are looked at to avoid finding yourself in a situation where you've wasted the organization's money and, going back is a big write-off. Thank you so much once again for coming here to join me. Because our industry is very new, there's a lot of lessons that we can draw from each other. And it's critical that we continue to share, notes to make sure that we don't make the same mistake twice. So let's meet again right here next week, same time. Thank you so much.